I never thought I'd end up here. I mean, who really plans on doing something like this? If you asked me 6 months ago, I'd tell you I was happily married, living the life I always dreamed of. Sure, like any marriage, we had our ups and downs. But who doesn't, right? The idea that I would betray my husband like I did feels so foreign to me now, but back then it seemed almost justified. Let me start at the beginning. My husband, Mike, and I had been together for almost a decade. We met when I was in college, and he was my first serious relationship. Things moved quickly. After graduation, we got married, settled into a cozy little house in the suburbs, and everything was good, or at least I thought it was. It was about a year ago when things started feeling off. At first, I couldn't put my finger on it. Mike was always so busy with work. He was a lawyer, and his hours were long. I got it, or at least I tried to. We'd talk in the evenings, after his late shifts, but those conversations started becoming less frequent. At first, I thought he was just tired. Who isn't after a long day of work? But as the months went on, it became clear that something was changing. He wasn't just tired, he was distant. I remember the first time I really noticed it. We were sitting on the couch one Saturday afternoon, watching TV like we used to, but something felt different. He wasn't engaging with me like he used to. I asked if he was okay, and he gave me this half-hearted smile and said, "Yeah, just stressed out with work." I didn't press him after that because I didn't want to seem needy. But I couldn't help but feel a bit abandoned. Fast forward a few months, and we were barely talking. I felt more like a roommate than a wife. He was always on his phone or in his office, and when we did interact, it was mostly about bills or house maintenance. The emotional connection we once had seemed to have disappeared. I started to wonder if maybe he wasn't happy, or if he had lost interest in me. And that's where my head started to go down a dangerous path. I began spending more time with my neighbor Josh. Now, let me be clear, Josh and I were never really close before. We'd wave when we saw each other outside, maybe chat about the weather, but that was about it. He was in his early 30s, single, and good-looking in a handsome but rugged kind of way. He was a mechanic and worked crazy hours, but when he was home, he was often in his garage working on cars or doing odd jobs around the neighborhood. I'll admit, I never really paid much attention to him until that one day. It was a random Tuesday afternoon when I first found myself sitting on Josh's porch, chatting with him. He was working on his truck when I came out to grab the mail, and he struck up a conversation about a flat tire on my car. Honestly, I wasn't expecting it to go anywhere, but I ended up staying there, talking for almost an hour. The conversation flowed easily, and for the first time in months, I felt like I was actually being heard. Josh didn't ask about my marriage or my personal life. He just listened to me talk about everything that had been bothering me. The distance between Mike and me, how lonely I felt, and how confused I was about everything. Looking back, I think that was the moment when I started to feel a spark of something I hadn't felt in a long time. I wasn't attracted to Josh at first, not in any way that was obvious. But he made me feel important. I didn't even realize how much I had been craving that attention until I got it from him. Over the next few weeks, we hung out more often. Sometimes, I'd bring him a cup of coffee while he worked on his truck, or I'd stop by just to chat. It was innocent at first, but I could feel the tension building between us. Then, one night, it happened. It wasn't planned, not at all. Mike was working late again, and I had just come home from running some errands. I saw Josh outside, sitting on his porch, looking up at the stars. He waved me over, and before I knew it, we were talking like we always did. But this time, it felt different. The energy between us was different. He was looking at me differently, and I could tell he noticed the shift in me too. The way he was leaning in closer. The way his voice dropped lower when he spoke. It felt like he was crossing some invisible line that I hadn't even realized was there. The next thing I knew, I was sitting next to him on his porch swing, and he was kissing me. It was soft at first, hesitant almost, but then it deepened. I pulled away for a second, my heart pounding, but all I could think was how much I needed this. I hadn't felt wanted in so long, and Josh, well, he seemed to want me. Not just as a neighbor or a friend, but as a woman. It felt so intense, so raw that I couldn't think straight. Before I knew it, we were in his house, and that was it. I'm not proud of what I did, but in the moment, it felt like a release. Like I was finally feeling alive again. The guilt didn't hit me until later, when I was lying in bed that night, thinking about Mike and what I had just done. But it wasn't just guilt that kept me awake. It was this deep, sinking feeling that I had crossed a line I could never come back from. But here's the thing. I didn't stop. I didn't even try to stop. For the next few weeks, Josh and I would sneak around. Mike still had no idea. Every time I saw him, I felt like I was living a double life. The guilt would rush in, but I'd push it down, telling myself that I deserved this. That I deserved to feel wanted. Mike wasn't paying attention to me, so why shouldn't I go looking for attention elsewhere? That's how I justified it in my head. But deep down, I knew it was wrong. I knew I was just digging a deeper hole for myself. And I still didn't stop. It wasn't until the day everything came crashing down that I realized just how badly I had messed things up. I honestly thought I could keep things going like this. I thought I could juggle it all, keeping my marriage intact while sneaking around behind Mike's back. Looking back, it's embarrassing to admit that I thought I could have it both ways. That I could live in this little bubble where Mike was none the wiser. And I could keep getting the attention I was so desperately craving from Josh. But it didn't take long for everything to start unraveling. It was one of those days where everything felt off. I had just gotten back from another one of my errands. I had been spending a lot of time running errands to cover up my secret rendezvous with Josh. The day had been quiet, nothing out of the ordinary. And Mike was home early, surprisingly, and I didn't think much of it at first. But the tension in the air was immediate. I could tell something was different. We sat down to dinner, and he barely said a word. That was unusual for him. Even when we were in a rut, Mike was never completely silent. It felt like we were two strangers sitting across from each other, not a married couple. I asked him what was wrong, and he just gave me this vague response about being stressed at work. His eyes were distant, though, and I could tell there was something more beneath the surface. After dinner, we went into the living room, and I tried to make small talk to break the silence. But then, it happened. Mike turned to me with this look that I couldn't place. It wasn't angry, but it wasn't kind either. There was something calculating about it. He asked, in a voice that was too calm for my liking, "Where were you today?" My stomach dropped. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to lie, but I couldn't. I was too tired of the lies. I thought, maybe this was it. Maybe this was the moment he would finally find out about everything. "I was just out," I said, hoping it would be enough, but Mike wasn't buying it. I could see it in his eyes. "No," he said, his voice sharp. "You were out, all right. But you weren't just out. You've been acting strange lately, coming and going at odd hours, and I'm tired of pretending like I don't see it. Where were you, really?" I felt my face flush. For the first time, I realized I didn't have a good excuse. The guilt was written all over me, and Mike knew it. He didn't need any more proof. He could see it in my eyes. But I wasn't ready to confess. Not yet. I tried to play it off, tried to deny it, but I could tell my attempts were futile. Mike was just staring at me now, waiting for me to crack. And that's when I felt it. The horrible weight of the situation, pressing down on me harder than ever before. "I don't know what you're talking about." I lied, my voice trembling. But even as I said it, I knew it was pointless. Mike was smarter than I gave him credit for. And then, in the dead silence that followed, he asked something that made my heart stop. "Are you sleeping with Josh?" I froze. The room felt like it was closing in on me. My breath caught in my throat, and I could barely find the words to respond. How did he know? Had he seen us? Had someone else told him? My mind raced, but in that moment, I knew it didn't matter. He knew. Mike, I couldn't even form a coherent sentence. How could I explain this to him? How could I justify what I had done? But Mike didn't need an explanation. His face contorted with a mix of hurt and anger, but there was also something else in his eyes. Disappointment. And that look was worse than any argument, worse than any fight. Because deep down, I knew I had failed him. "Don't," Mike said, cutting me off before I could say anything else. "Don't even try to deny it. I've seen the way you two look at each other. I've heard the way you talk about him when you think I'm not listening." I felt my stomach churn. How had it gotten this far? How had I let myself fall into this? Mike, I'm sorry, I whispered. But even as the words left my lips, I knew they were empty. They didn't mean anything anymore. I didn't know what I was sorry for. Was I sorry for betraying him? Or was I sorry that I got caught? The truth was, I didn't even know who I was anymore. He stood up then, his hands trembling, and for a second, I thought he might hit something. But instead, he turned around and walked out of the room, leaving me there alone with my guilt. The next few days were a blur. Mike didn't want to talk to me. He didn't yell or scream. He just shut down. And that was worse than anything. The silence between us was deafening. I couldn't look at him without feeling like I was suffocating. I tried to apologize, tried to explain that I had made a huge mistake, but Mike wouldn't hear it. He wouldn't even look at me when I spoke. He just kept his distance, acting like I was some stranger he didn't know anymore. And maybe, in a way, I was. It wasn't until a few days later, when I came home from a trip to the store, that I realized just how much things had changed. The locks on our front door had been changed. I stood there, staring at the new deadbolt, unable to believe what I was seeing. My heart sank as the realization hit me like a ton of bricks. Mike was done. I knocked on the door, hoping he'd answer, but I knew it was pointless. When he finally did, I could see it in his eyes. He had made up his mind. He wasn't going to let me back in. He just looked at me and said, "I want you out." I was numb. I didn't know what to say. What could I say? I had destroyed everything. And now I was facing the consequences of my actions. And that was when it hit me for the first time. I had lost everything. I don't think I fully understood the weight of what I had done until Mike changed the locks. That moment felt like a punch to the gut. It was as if everything I had been avoiding, everything I had been hiding from myself, suddenly became crystal clear. I had ruined my marriage. And it wasn't just some mistake I could take back with an apology. I had crossed a line, and Mike had made his decision. I remember standing there in front of the door, just staring at it for what felt like an eternity. The silence between us was so thick, I could almost hear it. Mike didn't say anything more after that. He just looked at me, his face hard as stone. He didn't seem angry anymore, though. He seemed resigned, like he had already mourned whatever we had, and was ready to move on. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to beg him to let me in, to explain everything, to tell him I was sorry, to promise him I'd never do it again. But I knew that wouldn't work. I couldn't even look him in the eye. I had done something unforgivable, and no amount of apologies could undo it. I turned and walked away from the door. I wasn't sure where I was going, but I couldn't stay there, not like this. I had to go somewhere, anywhere, to escape the crushing weight of my guilt. The thing was, I couldn't even call Josh. I couldn't go to him because deep down, I knew I had used him as a distraction from the real problems in my marriage. He was never the answer. He was just a temporary fix. And now I had lost both of them. I drove around for hours, not really caring where I was going, just trying to numb the feeling of losing everything I had. Eventually, I ended up at my sister's place. I don't even know why I went there. Maybe it was because I had nowhere else to go, or maybe it was because I knew she would be the one person who wouldn't judge me, at least not right away. When I got to her door, I knocked, and she let me in without a word. Her face softened when she saw me, and she just wrapped her arms around me. I didn't even cry at first. I just stood there, feeling numb, feeling like I had lost my sense of self. Finally, after what felt like hours, I let out the tears. "Emily, what happened?" She asked gently, after I had calmed down a little. "You and Mike, what happened?" I could barely look at her. I couldn't even bring myself to explain it all. But she was patient, waiting for me to speak. I took a deep breath and tried to find the words. "I messed up. I messed up so bad. I cheated on Mike. With Josh, our neighbor," I admitted, my voice trembling. "I don't even know how it happened. It just did." My sister's face didn't change. She didn't look shocked, but I could see the sadness in her eyes. "Why? Why would you do that?" "I don't know," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I felt so empty. I was so lonely. And Mikey wasn't there. He stopped paying attention to me. I thought it was just a phase, that we'd get through it. But then I started feeling like I was invisible, like he didn't care anymore. And then Josh made me feel seen, like I mattered. He was there for me when I needed someone. And I took advantage of that. I let it go too far. You know that's not an excuse, right? She said softly. I get why you felt the way you did. But cheating, it's not the way to fix things. I know. I said, my voice breaking. I know. I wish I could take it all back. I wish I could fix it. But I can't. Mike knows now, he found out. And now he's done. He changed the locks on the door. He won't even talk to me anymore. God. Emily, I'm so sorry, she said, pulling me back into another hug. I don't know what to say. There's nothing anyone can say, I replied, my voice muffled against her shoulder. I don't deserve anyone's sympathy. I messed up and now I'm paying the price. But what was the price? I was losing Mike, yes, I knew that. But I was also losing a part of myself. In trying to fix something that was broken, I had broken everything. And now I had to face the reality of it. That night, I stayed at my sister's place. I didn't sleep much. I couldn't stop thinking about Mike, about how I had betrayed him. I thought about the life we had built together, about the way he used to look at me, the way he used to laugh at my silly jokes. I had taken all of that for granted, and now it was gone. In the morning, I tried calling him. I left messages. I sent texts. I even begged him to talk to me to let me explain. But every message was met with silence, and the silence was worse than anything else. A few days later, I found myself standing in front of our house again. I had to do something. I couldn't just let this go. I had to at least try. I knocked on the door, my heart pounding in my chest. I had no idea what I was going to say. But I knew I couldn't let him walk away from everything without trying to fix it. When Mike opened the door, he looked at me with that same tired, resigned expression. He didn't seem surprised to see me, but he didn't invite me in either. He just stood there watching me. I'm sorry, I said, my voice barely audible. Mike, I don't even know where to begin. I messed up. I hurt you. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know that I regret everything. What I did was wrong. I didn't mean to hurt you. I love you. I've always loved you. His eyes softened for just a moment, but then they hardened again. He shook his head. Love isn't enough, Emily, he said, his voice flat. Not when you break someone's trust. You don't just get to say sorry and expect everything to be okay. I can't just forget what you did. I can't trust you anymore. I felt the sting of his words deep in my chest. They were true, of course, but it didn't make them hurt any less. I know, I whispered. I know. I don't expect you to forgive me. But please, just know that I'm sorry. I'll regret this for the rest of my life, and I'll live with that. He didn't say anything more. He just turned around and walked back inside, closing the door behind him, and that was it. That was the end of us. I left that day knowing I wouldn't be able to change Mike's mind. His decision was final. I couldn't blame him. How could I? I had destroyed everything that mattered to him, and to me too. My heart felt like it had been ripped out of my chest. I didn't know where to go from here. I had never imagined my life could end up like this. One moment, I had everything, and the next I had nothing. It was hard to even grasp how far I'd fallen, or what had led me to this point. I was consumed by shame, guilt, and a raw, hollow feeling that seemed to seep into every part of me. I went back to my sister's place, but I felt like I was a shell of the person I had been just days ago. She was kind, of course. She always was. But I could see the disappointment in her eyes, too. She didn't say much, but I knew she was hurting for me, and she should have been. I had destroyed not just my marriage, but the trust of everyone who had ever cared about me. The days blurred together. I spent most of my time pacing around, staring at my phone, hoping Mike would text me or call or just anything. But nothing came. The silence was deafening. And with each day that passed, the pain in my chest grew heavier. I realized that while I had tried so hard to fill the emptiness inside me with attention from Josh, it was never going to be enough. I had lost the one person who truly mattered, and now I was paying the price. The hardest part wasn't the loneliness, though. It wasn't even the fact that Mike wouldn't talk to me anymore. It was the self-loathing that gnawed at me. I knew what I had done was unforgivable. It was like a wound in my soul that wouldn't heal. How could I have been so selfish? How could I have let myself get to this point? And still, a part of me couldn't stop thinking about Josh. I had used him, I knew that. But he was there for me in ways that Mike hadn't been for a long time. Josh had made me feel wanted, and for someone who hadn't felt that in so long, it was like a lifeline. I knew it wasn't right. I knew it wasn't love. But in those moments, I didn't care. I just wanted to feel something, anything. But now I couldn't go back to him. I couldn't go back to the person I was when I was with him. It wasn't fair to either of us. He deserved someone who wasn't broken, someone who didn't have so much baggage, and I knew that he had his own life to get back to. I couldn't keep using him as an escape, not when I had to face the consequences of my own choices. A few weeks passed, and I finally did something I should have done sooner. I reached out to a therapist. I needed to understand why I had done what I did, why I had pushed my own marriage to the brink. I needed help, because deep down I knew that if I didn't fix myself, I would just keep making the same mistakes over and over again. The first session was a blur. I don't even remember everything we talked about, but I do remember one thing the therapist said that stuck with me. She said, "Cheating isn't just about the other person. It's about you. About something that's missing inside of you. The question is, what was missing that you couldn't get from your marriage?" I don't know why that hit me so hard, but it did. It made me realize that, yes, Mike had pulled away. Yes, he had become distant. But I wasn't completely innocent in this. I had let the distance grow. I hadn't tried to fix things. I hadn't communicated my needs. I had shut down just as much as he had. And instead of addressing the problem, I had found an easy way out. I had taken the path of least resistance, and in doing so, I had destroyed everything. The weeks that followed were a mix of intense therapy sessions and long, sleepless nights. I cried more than I thought possible, not just for the marriage I had lost, but for the person I had become. I didn't recognize myself anymore. But I knew I couldn't stay stuck in the spiral of guilt and self-pity forever. I had to find a way to move forward. I owed it to myself, and to Mike, to become a better person. I didn't expect Mike to come back to me. I didn't expect him to forgive me, or even to want to talk to me again. But I couldn't sit here and pretend I had done nothing wrong. I needed to be accountable for my actions, and I needed to learn how to be a whole person again, independent of anyone else. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do, but I slowly started to rebuild myself. About 2 months after Mike changed the locks, I got a message from him. It was short. It said, "I've been thinking a lot. We need to talk." My heart stopped when I saw it. It had been so long since we'd spoken, and I had given up on ever hearing from him again. Part of me was terrified of what he would say. Part of me was relieved, because maybe, just maybe, this was my chance to make things right. We met at a coffee shop, the place we used to go when we were first dating. He looked the same, but there was something different in his eyes. He wasn't angry anymore. He wasn't bitter either. He was just quiet. He looked at me for a long time before he spoke. "I don't know where to even begin," he said finally, his voice calm but distant. "You hurt me in ways I can't even explain. I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive you for what you did. But I don't want to keep holding on to this anger. It's not healthy for either of us." I nodded, my throat tight. I didn't know what I was expecting, but it wasn't this. I thought he would hate me forever. I thought he'd slam the door shut completely, never give me a chance to explain. "I've been doing a lot of thinking too," I said softly. "And I don't expect you to forgive me, Mike. But I am so sorry. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know that I regret everything. I never meant to hurt you. I just didn't know how to handle everything falling apart." There was a long pause. Mike looked at me, his face unreadable. Finally, he spoke again. "I don't know what's next for us, but I think we both need to heal, separately." That hit me like a punch in the gut. I had hoped for something more, even if it was just the tiniest glimmer of hope. But he was right. We both needed time. We both needed to figure out who we were, apart from each other. "I understand," I whispered, "and I'll respect that." We sat in silence for a while after that, neither of us knowing what to say. Eventually, we parted ways. It wasn't the closure I had hoped for, but it was the beginning of something. Maybe we'd find our way back to each other someday, or maybe we wouldn't. But for the first time since everything started unraveling, I felt like I was taking a step forward, and that, in itself, was something.